Welcome to Follow Your Curiosity, where we explore the inner workings of the creative process. I'm your host, Nancy Norbeck. Lowry Olafson knew from a young age that he wanted to be a musician, and like so many other aspiring musicians, had to figure out how to make it work. And he did. He has released 9 albums and performed around the world. He is also the founder and creator of PowerSongs, deeply meaningful personal songs for a wide range of individuals and groups, and PowerSongs Pro for businesses and other organizations. Lowry talks with me about the moment that changed his perspective on his musical prospects, immersing himself in the musical scene in Perth, Australia, how he developed the idea of power songs and how he's created them for individuals and school groups, and just why they make such a lasting impression on his clients. Here's my conversation with Lowry Olafson. Lowry, welcome to Follow Your Curiosity.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It's wonderful to be here.
So I start everybody off with the same question, which is, were you a super creative kid, or did you discover your creative side later on?
Well, that's a funny question because I came from quite a musical family. So, we all my mom was a piano teacher and we all had to take piano lessons. And then I switched to violin at 9, and then I started playing guitar when I was kind of 11. And I guess I started writing songs then. I wouldn't have said that, coming up through the conservatory classical stuff, I wouldn't have said I was particularly creative. I mean, I went into the musical theater stuff when there was chances as a kid to be in the line of chorus, the street chorus boys or whatever in grade 4. I did that. I don't know if you consider that to be creative, but I sure loved music and I sure loved the arts. And I guess, once I started writing my own songs, and that was pretty creative.
Yeah, I think I'd definitely call you a creative kid.
Yeah. Okay.
You sound a lot like my brother, who seems like anyway that he can just pick up any instrument he wants and play it. And I often look at him and say, that's disgusting. It's not fair.
No, I'm not that disgusting. I've learned, I'm struggling. I pound away plunk on my piano, and, but I took lessons on stuff. And
yeah, he's taken lessons too, but some stuff he just seems to manage to pick up out of the blue, which is
no, I
really
hate him.
not
I hate
fair.
him already.
So you said your family was really musical. Was it just your mother, or?
No, my dad was musical too. He played the saxophone. He was an engineer, but he played the sax, and they were, they'd come from a prairie background. So that was, in those days, people made their own music. So Dad played in a dance band when he was a kid, and he would have played sax and stuff on, the Saturday night dances. And Mom had a degree in music. So hers, but I remember all the time we had these sing songs around the piano all the time. It was kind of pre-TV. I'm pretty old. I'll be 69 this month. So it was, and I'm the youngest of my family. So that was something that a way of entertaining, that there was a lot of people made their own music much more, I think, for sure in my parents' generation, but even to a certain extent in my own. Yeah. So what was the question?
Is the rest of your family being musical?
Oh yeah. So they all kind of did the classical stuff. They did and there was nothing creative about, I mean, I just really disagree with the way that they teach, prioritize reading music as the first thing, that the gateway to learning, to being allowed to play music. I mean, it just makes no sense. It's like saying, okay, well, you can't speak until you can read, right? And you can't just say whatever's on your mind. You have to read something that somebody brilliant wrote before you. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And for people to have this page between you and the music just doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, music is like you just pull it out of the air. Have a nice day, right? I mean, how hard is that?
Yeah, that's interesting, because you're reminding me of the way that I've always had an issue with the way Shakespeare is taught. Like, why do you have to read it? It's a play. You should see it and you should experience it and hear it. And odds are good you'll understand it more than if you try to read it anyway. And the example that I've always given people is, I wouldn't hand you a Beethoven score and say, go home and read this. You can't listen to it. Just go home and read it. And then we'll come in and
Yeah.
talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's really interesting. So would you like to see it taught as an oral tradition then, more Shakespeare?
I always had, when I was teaching, and even a little bit before I was teaching, I had this idea that, somehow to work with local theater groups or something like that and get them to actually come in and do an interactive Shakespeare experience.
Yeah.
And, some of it so that kids can watch it, and sometimes get the kids in it, and just playing around with it, because I think half the reason that people are scared of it is that they're told they have to go home and read it.
Well, it sure destroys the playfulness of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that's what I'm trying to get back into in my own songwriting and in my own creativity, is just allowing myself just to play, because even with all the stuff I've done, I still have such a critical kind of judgmental side when it comes to my own creations, and I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that page takes it out of the body and puts it into your intellect, right? It's what I love about songs is that, I mean, it's kind of like with these power songs that I do. It's, affirmations are completely cerebral, and all of the kind of negative stuff that we get into these are all thoughts that we buy into. And it's like, okay, stop thinking and get into your body. I mean, that's where, you can feel stuff and you can be centered and calm, and where your power, where your presence is, right? And so we don't want to be cut off at the neck. And yet
Yeah.
these reading stuff puts you into your head, and the head is like, that's just feeding all of the inner critic, man. We don't need to give him any ammunition.
It's true, though. It really is. You're reminding me that, this past spring, and I did a pep talk episode about this right afterwards. I was babysitting my nephews overnight, and the older one, well, they both had a piano recital coming up, but the older one was doing a duet of Hey Jude.
Oh.
And I'd promised that I would try to go over it with him, even though, my last piano lesson was when I was in 6th grade. But, he was really trying, to do the top part, but there were rhythms and things that he didn't quite get. And I looked at him and I thought, okay, I can tell who the singers are and aren't in this family. Because I said, you don't really know this song, do you? And I said, let's go listen to it. And because first he said, yeah, I'll ask Mama if we could listen to it when she gets back. I'm like, we don't need to wait. We can do it now. And then, I said, after we listened to it once, I said, go over to the piano and get Daddy's book of Beatles music, because we're going to sing it and you need the words. And so we played it again and we sang along with it, and we did it a couple of times, because I was like, if you can't sing it, I think the fastest way to get something into you is to sing it. And so, and we did that a couple of times, and he was a great sport for a 9-year-old kid, but, and then it started to come together a little bit better. And it was just, you gotta get it into you. You can't just read your way through it, like you were saying.
Yeah, well, you kind of make it your own that way. You embody it, right? Mm-hmm. It's that word embody, I think, is, it's a good one, because, one of the things that I like doing when I perform is just like not singing the song, not consciously, but you just sing the song in however it feels. And so sometimes you might sing, but you're not doing it with, a forte and a what is it?
Pianissimo?
Pianissimo. Thank you. To me, it's that level of instruction is like, that's pretty directive, for you. Okay, now feel angst. Now feel, you know what I mean? Now get louder to express this. But, you might actually get the same thing by being quieter, or you might feel that you want to be quieter. And, you can do all these these nuances. And when you're singing the same old, hey, Jude, or maybe it's, hey, Jude, don't make it bad, right? I mean, there's just endless stuff when you're just expressing yourself, right? And so that's, for me, I just really admire people that are super free and expressive in their performance, right? And I think everybody loves that. Like people just relate so much to people that are free in their expression, because most people aren't.
Right. Right. And as you're saying this, like I've been singing in choirs since I was about 4. And so, for choral music, you kind of have to pay attention to the dynamics and the speeds and all of that stuff. But at the same time, you still don't know what's going to happen each time, because you don't know what the conductor's going to do. Right. Which is why conductors will constantly yell at you to pay attention to what they're doing, because if only half the choir notices that they're saying, be really quiet right now, it doesn't work so well. But, you are essentially the instrument in that case, and the conductor is playing you collectively. So it still kind of comes out in the same way, but differently.
Yeah, I think because then I can see where that's legitimate, because then you're working as a unit and you're going with the vision of the conductor. If you're singing alone, it's your vision. You can just do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want. It's great.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit. You talked about taking piano lessons from your mom, how did that go?
I didn't actually. She took them. She didn't want to teach us herself, so we went to Mrs. Rudachuk.
Okay.
Mrs. Rudachuk was like the worst. She had flaming red hair, and she would sit and put on this lipstick all the way through the lesson, and just keep adding more and more bright red lipstick. And then, if you made him and yawn constantly throughout your lesson, I mean, she couldn't have been worse. And then if you made a mistake, she'd wrap your knuckles literally with the ruler. I mean, she was just the worst, right? And we just all hated her. And finally, on my 9th birthday, I said to Mom, Grandpa's violin is sitting in the hall closet. You know what? I would be willing to forego my piano lessons, I feel like a piece of our family's history is being lost, and someone should play that violin. So she let me switch. So, but I mean, I'm sure she was pretty tuned into what a terrible teacher she was. But, imagine, putting kids, and then every day it was like half an hour in the morning, and the piano was going nonstop because there was 4 kids, and we all had to do these lessons, and my dad would practice with me, or my grandfather would practice, and they'd count it out. And it was, it was just like, I hated it.
Yeah.
It was the most joyless exposure to music, so when I started, but then my violin teacher was nicer. I liked him. And it was, that was only good till I was about 12. And then I just started losing interest, because like with the guitar, I'd started playing guitar on my own, and I was just teaching myself. And it was like, nobody cared if I practiced or not. Right. It was totally just me, but I played, I was listening to stuff, and I could sing along with the violin. I couldn't play anything without music on the violin. I was like, that was my best instrument. I reached a certain level of ability on that. And yet I couldn't have played Happy Birthday without the music. And plus, when you're like 12, 13, it's not cool anymore. It's definitely not cool. And so I just wanted to quit. And eventually it took until I was like 15 before my dad finally let me quit. But then I quit for, like 9 years or 10 years. And then I was going traveling like on a world trip. And I thought, okay, well, maybe this would be a good chance to pick up violin again. And I'll learn this time by ear, and I won't play by, music. And so I bought another violin, and I took it with me, and I just started to make stuff up, and learned a few fiddle tunes. But what I really loved doing was accompanying other singers. That was the thing that really turned me on. And so, now I have a really nice relationship with the instrument, because I did at least have a decent grounding in it, but I don't have a lot of reason to play it, except, once in a while I'll do maybe one thing at a show or something like that. But mostly I'm a singer-songwriter. So, I don't get that much chance to play it, but I love it, and I continue to develop, my skills.
So it's mostly guitar these days?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a wonder after that piano experience that you kept
Oh
doing
yeah,
music at all.
yeah. No, it was in my blood. I mean, like I remember when I was 3 years old trying to whistle and imitate the meadowlarks, and my dad
Oh,
whistled all the
wow.
time. Like I mean, music was in my blood from day one. Yeah.
Are your siblings the same way?
Not to the same degree. I mean, they all play, but they still are. They're all very much in that kind of like typing kind of approach to music, and try as I might, I can't get them to. It's like, come on, you guys! Like, it should sound nice. Like, you know, like,
Yeah.
like the goal is not to make it play stuff out of your ability. The goal is to play stuff that you like. It should be a pleasant experience for those around you. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah. And
But
I remember like when I was at Bucknell in college, I went to I picked my college for its choir, which sadly no longer exists, which is a whole other sad story we won't go into. But just a really, really phenomenal choir with a great director. And, as an incoming freshman, you're just sort of blown away by it. And we used to joke in subsequent years that, because we would all come back like a week early and we'd say, oh, yeah, we got to learn all this so we can scare the hell out of the freshmen. But, it was a good enough choir that could sight read well enough that we would sit down and we would sight read a piece and I'd be like, wow, that's great. Let's go do it now. And, and then, you would think that at that point I would have done this enough that I would have recognized that there's a reason why you rehearse. And yeah, obviously it wasn't perfect, but it was like, this sounds really good. Let's go. And
yeah,
and yet, there's that difference between we just sight read this and yeah, that sounded cool, and actually making music when you know it well enough, when it's gotten into your system, and you can have that kind of flexibility with it, because sort of like
yeah,
what I was talking about earlier, you don't need to look at the music so much, so you could pay attention to the conductor, you can kind of feel
yeah,
the vibe of the group and all
yeah,
of that. It
yeah.
took me a while before I actually understood that there was a real difference between rehearsing and just singing and actually making music.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different levels, and you guys must have been pretty skilled to be able to go in and sight read stuff like that to the point where you felt like you could do it to some extent. But I'm talking about where people won't like this stop and start kind of the starting.
Hmm.
It's like the beat is like you can't argue with the beat. Like the beat is the thing that we all. It's our common ground.
The beat will argue with you before you
Yeah,
can argue with
and
the
the
beat.
audience, if you don't keep the beat, there's no joy in it for the audience. It's the one thing we all want to just like tap our foot or move our body or do something, and if it's erratic, then that's kind of like the bottom line to me. So so that's there's probably is a certain level of enjoyment that could be had when you guys are just doing your first things, and it's probably not bad. But as you get it better and you do that stuff, then the nuances and it really then it isn't about singing the right notes. In fact, it may be about singing a surprise note or a wrong note or a different note or something. It's about how you sing, and it's about how you feel, and it's about it's really an experience of expression, more than it is of kind of duplicating notes
Yeah.
correctly.
And I've
Right.
always found that especially fascinating with jazz singers like Ella Fitzgerald or Louis Armstrong and the scat, and how it just
Yeah.
goes and it has a life of its own, but it always comes back where it needs to be. I just find that so fascinating.
Yeah. And the point of music for me is usually to take people on some kind of a journey, a musical, an emotional journey, right? Somewhere over the rainbow, where, somewhere like that's an expansive, just those two
Hmm.
notes. That, I mean, man, that takes people places. Just that, da 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 dum, right? It's we're talking two notes here. There's nothing magical or four notes. There's
True.
nothing very interesting happening there. I always say with playing guitar, like the left hand is just not interesting. It's everything happens in, assuming you're right-handed, in the strumming and in the emotion and the feeling and the tone, and like that's where it all happens. So um so that's where all the expression is. And so interesting, I was going to, where all the music is. That's what I was going to say. So they're almost, to me, a little bit interchangeable, those
So,
terms. Right?
so when did you realize that this was something you wanted to do, like for real, not just as lessons, not just as playing around on your own, but this is what I'm here to do with my life?
Well, I realized that in high school because I was writing songs and I was putting on coffee houses for, in the high school for me and my friends to play at and stuff like that. And then, I've told this story so many times, I'm not sure if it's true, but I guess it is. But when I was like 15 or something, I said, Dad, I decided I want to be a musician. I want to be a songwriter and I want to, put out albums, and that's what I want to do. And Dad said, well, it's great that you like music, Lowry, but it's not much of a way to make a living. And that, kind of killed it for me. It didn't. I'm not one of these guys that's like, I'll show them. It was kind of, I think after that, I just kind of doubted myself. And I kept doing it. I kept playing, I kept writing songs, but I'd write like a song a year, or no, that's not true. In grade 12, I was like writing a song a night. And I had some friends around were like, oh, it's so great, man. And I had some love affair that was going wrong. And, I had plenty to write about and plenty of adulation from my friends. But then I kind of started wanting to try and play in the bars and stuff. And I was just like the wrong guy because I wasn't fun. These songs were kind of, navel gazing folk singer songs. And nobody wanted to hear those in a bar in a ski area where I was, working at when I got out of high school. And so there was just kind of like a lot of disappointment and kind of that kind of stuff, but I never really stopped. I kept listening to music like crazy, and I was all about it, and I still identified, I think, that way. And I would, I did a couple of talent contests here and there at university, and got some kudos, enough to kind of keep myself going. And then I spent 4 years living in Western Australia, in Perth. I went traveling after my kind of when I was about 24, and Perth has this amazing music scene because it's so isolated. It's on the west coast of Australia, and really amazing music scene. And when I first got there, I got invited. I hooked up with some people in the folk festival scene there, and this woman said, "Oh, I'm playing at this festival next month. Would you sing with me? Would you perform this with me?" And so I went and performed with her. And we got, great, had a great response. And I guess I had to, stay longer. Anyway, long story short, I ended up staying in Perth for about 4 years. And I ended up playing in a lot of different bands, everything from like the folk scene and doing my singer-songwriter thing to, there was a band that was called Tridempery I was in. It was traditional and contemporary music together. We had like a concertina and an old guy playing harmonica and somebody else playing two of us playing guitars, and I guess I was violin, but doing this I loved the versatility and the fact that we were doing such different kinds of music. And then I ended up playing in the sci-fi band, and we were watching Doctor Who all the time, and that it was synthesizers started coming out, and it was like the new wave music was happening, and so I wrote the UFO, where have you come from? I just really liked a broad spectrum of music and learning to play and write in a whole bunch of different styles, to me, and all original music, and there was an audience for that there. So then I came back to Canada when I was like 28, and this friend of mine sat me down and he said, "Okay, Lowry," he was into Amway and he was into goal setting and all this. And he sat me down and he said, "What do you want to do with your life? If you could do what you wanted with your life, what would you do?" And I didn't want to answer. I didn't want to say. And he said, "Come on, what is it?" And I said, "Well, I get choked up now just saying it." I said, I want to be a singer. I want to be a performer. I want to write songs. I want to release albums. And And, unlike my dad, he didn't, he said, well, what would you have to do to make that real? And I thought, well, I guess I need to write some songs, you know? And so I set a goal to have enough of my own songs to do a night at this cafe, at Soft Rock Cafe in Vancouver. And then, I did that in this is like 1982, 83, whatever, did that. And then it was like enough to have a full night of my own. And so I did that, wrote those songs, did that. And then it took me till I think I didn't release my first album till 92. I was writing songs. I met some guys that had a studio in 87, but it was a slow bloom and it took a while. And, but I just kind of kept at it. And, now I have, lots and lots. I've got 9 albums, and that's just because I stopped making albums about 10 years ago, I'd still release and record stuff, but, there's no business model that makes any sense to be a folk singer now. Mm-hmm. So, so I use songwriting for other things.
That's amazing, though, especially since, you were talking about the slow buildup. I mean, did you get discouraged in there at all?
Oh, all the time. No, I was, I would say the discouragement and despair has been like this continuum through my life. It's the one thing that I have been working so hard to overcome, is constant despair of, and I'm a pretty resilient guy, and I've had a pretty charmed life. So, but yeah, I would say that, I never got a record deal. I put out all my own albums myself. I've had plenty of rejection and due to this day, for that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I also managed to build a pretty solid following. I put out all those albums. I toured all through Canada and the US, Australia, Europe. And I didn't play stadiums. I played house concerts and folk clubs and, some festivals and stuff, but relatively a pretty obscure career, right?
Hey, if it works.
Well, in those days it worked. You could with the model. I mean, now there's no model that works. Since now they've come in with streaming, because before you could make it go if you sold tickets and you sold albums, right? And having said that, I did a house concert last couple of months ago, and I sold a lot of albums. I was like, wow, that's interesting. That hasn't happened for a while. But for the most part, this Spotify stuff, like they give you have to get 200 streams to get a penny out of Spotify.
That's insane.
Yeah, and the average wage at Spotify, I've been told, is $136,000 average wage for the employees there, but they won't pay the artists. So this whole model has always been like that, where the artists are always getting the short end of the stick, money wise. And now there is no model, and consumers won't pay for money or won't pay for music now. It used to be a product. Now it's a service. We all do it. I mean, I love the fact that I can listen to anything I want just on my phone. There's nothing I can't practically access for $10 a month or whatever Apple Music or those guys charge, right? So you can't blame people. But, the artist, there's no model, by which it makes sense for me to record and release a song.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we all do it for the love and for the need and, all that stuff now, right?
Yeah, but it upsets me that people essentially don't get paid.
Yeah.
It bothers me.
Well, it's worse than we don't get paid. It's like it costs us money. Like the last song I recorded, it's okay. I wrote it for my daughter. It was an important song to me. I wanted, and I felt it was a good song. So I spent some money. I mean, I have a studio in here as well, so I can do it relatively cheaply, but I still hired some of my buddies and, you get it mastered and you do stuff. So, I still had at least $800 into that song. Well, and then I made a video, and that somebody else, so, then you've got $1,500 into a song, and what do you get back? It would be under $10.
Yeah.
under $10 in recouping, right?
Yeah.
So,
You got to
you know,
really want to do it.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm paying for it. I'm basically paying you to listen to my songs if I record something, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. I just, not to end up on that tangent, but
No.
it just bothers me that we've decided that, first of all, that music is mostly background music for other things, and so we don't really even pay attention to it a whole lot, and therefore, we don't need to pay for it.
Yeah.
It just,
Well, even if I mean, people I'm sure still listen to things and pay attention. I mean, I guess we do have that, my parents' generation, there was no, there was no kind of stereos and records and all that stuff. So people didn't have to be that good. I mean, every house had a piano, every
mm-hmm.
house had a violin. But music was, I mean, it was for the kings that they had a guy come in and play the lute, and they could have
Right.
music, or
Yeah.
somebody came in and sang, right? But it wasn't like really well mastered and EQ'd and recorded in a,
Right.
like,
Right. And yeah, I mean, a couple months ago, I started, and I haven't done it lately, and it's been bothering me. I need to again, but I started just like every evening going on YouTube and pulling up some random piece of classical music. Sometimes I just pick a composer's name out of thin air and just pick something, and listening to it with headphones, closing my eyes, and just really listening to it and feeling it and trying to just shut off my brain and let it wash over me. And it's been amazing. And I just find myself thinking, my whole life, well, and Lord knows, I grew up in a classical only household. So you can imagine how much I wanted to listen to classical music as a kid.
yeah.
But now it's just, especially like big orchestral stuff that has lots of moving parts. It's just like, wow, just like trying to notice all of those parts
Oh my
kind of
God.
shuts your head off anyway, because you can't take it all in at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's been such a phenomenal experience, and I wish that more people would do it, and I need to get myself back into it because I've fallen off of it a little bit. But it's just, you don't notice if you don't make the effort to notice. But when you do, it's like, wow, there's all of this stuff here. I mean, even things that I love that I've heard a million times, because you hear it a million times, you're like, oh yeah, it's that thing again. And you're not, you're driving down the road, or you're making dinner, or, whatever it is you're doing. And
Right.
it's just so different when you actually sit down and really pay attention to it. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't listen to much music because I just, uh, because I don't like it that much for background. If I'm thinking about stuff, I find it really like, it's not, I don't find it relaxing. So I listen to music more to hear songs by people that to get a sense of stuff. And I'm doing a songwriting mentorship right now with this woman down in LA named Andrea Stolpe, and she's a multi-platinum songwriter. And I'm trying to develop my songwriting in new ways and make it become more playful and overcome a lot of my blocks and stuff like that. And it's been great. And so she gets us listening to stuff that I wouldn't normally listen to. But I'm not going to I'm going to really focus on a song or a few songs by somebody for a while. But the background music thing doesn't really work for me for the most part. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you want other people to buy your stuff, and listen to your stuff, but you're not listening to anybody else's,
Yeah, it depends though. I mean, I used to be able, when I was in high school, my mom would come in and I'd have, Duran Duran or the Police or
Yeah.
whatever playing.
Yeah.
And while I was doing homework or reading a book, and she would say,
Yeah.
how can you read while you're listening to this? And it just didn't faze me. It was totally fine, but I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
If I'm going to listen to anything while I'm reading or working, it's got to be something without words at the very least. And even then that might be too much. So yeah, totally.
I can do it. Like, it's fun. I like it when my girlfriend comes over and we cook dinner together and stuff. And I like having jazz on and stuff like that. Then it's it sets a mood. It lifts things. I never used to do that. And I'm really enjoying that now. but yeah, working wouldn't work for me. It's, my focus. It would be distracting. Yeah.
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 So tell me how you decided that you wanted to start writing songs for other people.
Well, I do. The songs that I write for other people are power songs. They're like a musical affirmation. They're more like a mantra than they are a song. I mean, they're a way of they're a delivery service for an affirmation. And so I love the idea of overcoming obstacles, overcoming despair, of nipping those negative thoughts in the bud, so that we can really, there's nothing we can't do. And the idea of saying yes to life, and yes to the things that we want to do, and yes to, not saying, oh yes, but it's not much of a way to make a living, that Eeyore kind of thing.
That line
um
clearly has stuck with you
yeah.
and
Well,
rang
and
true.
because it's just dead wrong. I mean, my
Right.
dad did that. He became an engineer. God knows what he would have loved to have done, you know. But that whole idea of saying yes to your dreams, and then, okay, like my friend said, so then what would you have to do to make that real, right? And so then you're already on to like thinking, okay, what's a step I could take, or do that kind of stuff. So for me, I have really interested in tools that help us get quickly out of the red zone of anxiety and fear and doubt and shame and all that stuff, into a higher energy, to the blue zone, to peace and faith and joy and all that kind of stuff. And so I was going through a divorce a few years ago, and this friend of mine said, well, my life was kind of in a shambles, and I'm trying to reinvent myself and think about, it was kind of a blank slate, right? And she said, well, why didn't you do affirmations? And I said, because they don't work. They just all they do is start an argument in their head. And I won't say they won't work, but they do have that downfall that,
Mm-hmm.
you can say I'm a millionaire, but if you're working, no, you're not. You're working at McDonald's, idiot. So they create an argument. But she said, so why don't you write a song? And I thought, okay. So I wrote this song. And I just thought, I'm going to put everything in this song that I want, that I really want. Because and if I had my dream, I would live on the ocean. I would have someone that loves me. I would be doing meaningful work. This is what I want. So I wrote the song that went, I got a house on the water and someone to love. I laugh and sing and work and play. I'm living in the flow, helping people grow. Joy and adventure every day. And that was all there was to it.
Oh, that's great.
But like within 6 months of that, I mean, it seemed impossible to me that I would have a house on the ocean. It's like, yeah, you and which other folk singers, and then, then it's like, but that's what I wanted. It's like, if you tell me, ask me what I want, that's what I would, that's what I want. And then it's kind of like, well, actually, maybe, there is a way I could do this. And, you start thinking about possibilities that you don't think about when all you do is just, that's never going to happen. And you just kind of fall for those negative things. And so, within 6 months, I was building this house with my sister and brother-in-law on this property that I made them buy 16 years ago, and they weren't ever going to do anything. But together we could do something. And I had experience in that, in building and, designing stuff and all that kind of thing. And I didn't mind dealing with the architects and the builders and stuff like that. And it was just a total win for everybody. And so, everything from that song just kind of started falling into place. So then people were saying, well, I want a power song. And so I had like 4 or 5 people that all said that on the call, and said, okay, well, and sure, I'll write a song with you guys, and you see how you like the process, and we'll do it. And it was magical for people for me to be sitting there really listening to them really deeply, and saying, what do you want, and where do you, and people are saying, well, I just want to feel like I'm enough. And it's like, well, enough is okay, but is that all? And it's like, well, actually, the word magnificent comes to mind. And it's like, now you're talking. right? And so then we write this song, I'm stepping into the magnificent me. And what's the magnificent me is not an egotistical, vain, self-centered person. A magnificent person is wise and generous and kind and creative and free. I mean, that's magnificence, right? And so, what I would be really insistent about with people is that the words, because we have so few words in the song, is that these words had to really have trigger a lot of meaning for them. So when you say, I'm living in the flow, helping people grow, well, what does living in the flow mean? Well, it means I'm making money, for one. It means, I'm working with really great people. It means it's coming easily and freely. It means, we love to work. I mean, so, for me, even though I've only got 5 words or whatever that is for living in the flow, 4 words, that for me personally has a lot of meaning that it wouldn't have to you, but it might mean something else to you. But these songs are personal anthems. And so, so I'm pretty, often people are saying, oh, I'm happy, I like the song. It's like, no, there's more. I know you've got more in there. There's more. What would be a better word? What would, and so, so it's really a powerful process to really kind of have somebody listen deeply and help you. And because, it's one thing to sort of want what you want, but then to give yourself permission to want it. Like, to me, when I moved into this house, I felt guilty for the first year. So like, who am I to have a house on the ocean in this, in this fantastic place? It's like, this is, the idea of deserving, I don't really think we deserve things, because why would I deserve it any more than somebody else? But it's like, I mean, at least if you're going to be here, be grateful and enjoy it and let that, but to me, this idea that we can live lives that are, really expansive and fulfilling and fun and playful and joyful and all that kind of stuff. We don't have to have our nose to the grindstone every day, like go without and suffer and martyr and, oh no, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the way. There's no reason to live that way.
No. And I love the fact that it's not just, what do you want me to write a song about? But that you're actually, interacting and digging for the really, really good stuff. And I have to think that people probably feel seen in a way they haven't.
Oh, yeah.
Because nobody else has ever asked them things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so, like, I could never write your power song for you. Like, it just wouldn't. I remember I do them for team building things with organizations sometimes. And I wrote with a few different hospice societies. And I remember this one hospice I was writing with, and they said, we definitely do not want the word healing in our song. We do not heal. People do not get healed. That's what it is. Like, okay, we will not have the word healing in the song. And then I went to a different one, and they said, we want the word healing in this song because we heal. People may not be able to, but there's a lot of healing that goes on. It's like, okay. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so personal what that is. And so, my job is kind of just to kind of help people dig deeper and to really get to the essence when they feel like they've really hit pay dirt, right? And it's it's so collaborative, but it's also, it's really powerful for people, because most people have kind of lost sight of their creativity, or they think they can't sing, they think they're not musical, they can't all these. But once you start getting into it, they have opinions big time. It's like, you think you don't know anything about. I thought you didn't know anything about writing songs. Like, how come we're having this discussion? Then it's like they insist that this word will not work, or this one has to be in, or that they want this. And then I say, well, it would be nice to rhyme this though. Is there a word that we could use that would rhyme? Or if we can't, let's change these words. This is the structure. I want to write something that's catchy, something that's going to support you. So, to me, I'm not going to write a crappy song. I have no interest in writing a crappy song. And but if they understand what we're going for, then we're both on the same team. I don't get in arguments with people.
Right.
It's their song, but there's certain things that are going to make it a song that they love, right?
Yeah. I keep thinking of this as like a musical vision board.
Yeah, totally.
And the great thing about it is that unlike the vision board that you are not going to lug around with you all the time, you can have the musical vision board in your head all the time. But I'm
Hmm.
also thinking, I can sit down and I can make myself a vision board in an afternoon. No big
Yeah.
deal. There it is. It's done. It, sits on a shelf or wherever I put it. But what you're describing sounds to me not only like people being seen for the first time, but also there's got to be something affirming about working with somebody else who's like, yeah, this is really good, and not saying, well, you're not going to have trouble making a living at it. Like there's, it feels like there's a
Oh,
permission
yeah.
element to it.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, the effect that my friend had on my life, I mean, for somebody to say, it's the yes and, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the yes and when we write together, that's exactly what it is. It's group flow. Like if the qualities that it takes to get into flow are safety, skin in the game, um, complete focus, clear goals. Yes and is like key, right? And my friend said, he didn't say, you can't make a living. He said, what would it take? Like, okay, that sounds cool. What would you need? Well, I guess I need some songs. I was like that joke, like your chances of writing a hit song are better if you've written a song,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, so yeah, I think when we have people that believe in us in that way, oh my God, it's just, it's so key. But this song allows you to become your own cheerleader because you put a stake in the ground and you say, you know, I'm brave enough to be the one that sees the light in others, the sparkle that ignites the flame, so all of us can shine. From here to the horizon, I'm a beacon on the sea. I find joy in every moment. I'm bright, I'm strong, I'm free. There's a wide world out there waiting, and I'm so lucky to be me. That's one I wrote for this woman, Anna Malikian, who's a coach, uh, and I'm so lucky to meet me. What a way to affirm yourself and to step into this other piece of who you are. Because what are you going to show up as? The small version? Oh, excuse me, could you tell me the time, or should I just go to hell? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
these are all versions of ourselves. It's just like which one of you, which Nancy, which Lowry is going to show up. The little guy that, I could never do that. Or the ones like, hey, what's happening? Let's go. Right?
Right.
Let's do it. Come on, you guys. And it's about presence. It's like, how do you become and being in your power in the healthiest sense of the word. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but speaking of vision boards, a lot of my clients, I like once we write the song, then I record it for them, and so they have the recording that they can listen to and sing along with and dance to and do all that kind of stuff. But a lot of them will create a vision board to go with it, a slideshow that goes with the song, and I do that sometimes for some of my clients, and I'll have it on a web page, and they can just bookmark it, they can just watch it anytime.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
and it's got all these pictures that inspire them. So not only then they get the visual as well, but audio is the thing. Audio
Mm-hmm.
reaches the brain 100 times faster than visuals. Audio is the thing. Audio never dies. Like audio branding is. Don't get me started on why it's so valuable, why it's such a good investment. And I do that for speakers and thought leaders and companies. I write theme songs for them. These little jingles but the other thing too is that you don't have to hear the whole song, to trigger it. You just go somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
you know what's coming, right? I'm brave enough, right? I'm so lucky to be me. You don't have to hear the whole song, right? It's da 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 dum. That's the power of audio. Is it can trigger an entire sense of feeling and reconnection to who you are and your strength. And so it's a powerful tool, right? And when you wrote it, I mean, you could have your Katy Perry song, and people say, oh, that's our song. But I'll tell you what, and I write them with couples sometimes for their anniversary or something. When it's their song, oh my God, the impact of that.
Oh,
the
yeah.
meaning of that, for them to put their relationship, for you to put your dreams into a song that's literally your song and it's your words, man. Like, that's why I don't do cover tunes, because like my own songs just mean more to me.
Right. Right. And I'll be honest, the hair on my arms is standing up just hearing you talk about this. And I'm wondering, like, do you usually record the song for people, or are they
Yeah.
part of the recording process? Do they sing it with you, or
I mean, on the when we're writing it that day, yeah, they might sing with me, but ultimately I make them kind of a vocal and guitar version. And then if they want, I can give them a version without my vocal, so they can just sing with things. Sometimes a lot of my clients will want to have me produce a more like a studio quality version that has bass and drums and electric guitars and background vocals. Sounds like a radio hit, which I
mm-hmm,
love doing. So then, I want them to sing, right? But I also want them to have a clean recording
mm-hmm.
of the song with the words and the melody, because part of it is like I want them to learn the melody that we write. Like, we make decisions. The melody has a point, right? Like, it's a very different experience to go down bada moon river wider, than to go moon river wider than a mile. It's like that's a small river,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right. So and then these nuances of the melodies are the things that to me make them beautiful. And so when we're writing them, we're making decisions. And it's like, okay, you guys know we decided that we were going to go up there, not down. So did you forget about that, or did you change your mind? Because like I want to make decisions about how this melody is going to go. And that's, you know, we're deciding not just on the words, we're deciding on the melody, we're deciding on the chords. This is like this is a creation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And one that you want to last for a long
Forever,
time.
forever,
Yeah.
forever. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I love this idea so much. I mean,
yeah.
I've loved it since I first heard of it, but I love it even more now.
Oh yeah, it's so fun. It's just like, I mean, I used to do these with kids, right? And that was where I sort of started doing this, because uh, I would go into a classroom of like 35 kids at 8:30 in the morning, and we'd have 2.5 hours to have this song ready to record and perform for the whole school that afternoon. And it's kind of daunting to do this, but I'll tell you, every single time, and we'd be at like, okay, you guys, it's 11:30 and we need another verse. We got 15 minutes, and it's like, don't disappear now. And so we'd just hunker in, and we'd write it, and it would just, and when we're done and we'd finished the recording, the cheer that would go up from everybody of accomplishment and joy that we had created this thing together, right? It was just like it. I don't think I've ever done one where that feeling of, okay, yes, now all the ducks are in a row and everything works, and we fought hard to make this happen, right?
Do you find that the process of writing the song brings out that same kind of energy, even though
Yeah,
you're not dealing with kids?
yeah, because it's a bit of a roller coaster. Like, it starts off well, and then it kind of doesn't go well for a while. You're stuck and you get discouraged, and so I used to think that meant I was incompetent and I didn't know what I was doing. But what I realized about uh, flow, when I did this flow course, and one of the second stage of flow is struggle, right? So the first thing, you're getting ideas and assembling stuff, and acquiring assets, and then you start putting them together. And this is what Einstein did, and this is what all these guys did. And then they would be stuck, and then he would go sailing. Einstein would go sailing, or he'd go rowing, or he would do something. And so with the kids, typically what I would do would say, okay, I'm depressed. We're going to take a break, and we're all going to do it. Or we might run out into the field and do a lap around. And sometimes when I'm on a Zoom call and I'm writing with people, it's just like, okay, let's just take 60 seconds, literally. And I'd walk out on my deck thinking like, oh, this is not going well. We're not going to get this. And I'm discouraged and I'm worried and stressed, and I walk out, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I know. Right. And then we come back in, and we would have this breakthrough. So that's kind of how the thing works, which is, And it's because this is not easy, right? This is not like we're not just taking the first thing that comes along. We're writing an important song that's a true song, that's a courageous, brave song that hangs together really well. Like, I mean, I'm proud of that song I just sang, I'm brave enough, and Anna was happy with that song earlier on. She would have quit 20 minutes before it was done. And I said, no, Anna, I think we can make this better. And so, she trusted me and we hung in there. And by the end, she's like, oh my God, I'm so glad we didn't just settle for, because I kind of liked it. But now she just she sings this song every morning, and it's an important part of her life, So, yeah.
Songs get into our DNA in a way that other things don't too. So
it's never leaving.
No, but you're right. There's always that point where you get stuck. It's just part of the creative process. It happens to everybody. But like you say, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm doomed. I'm no good at this. And
that's when they quit. Right.
Yes.
And so for me, I never had that luxury. Right. So in my own process, that's where I quit. Right. But because I was writing, I was paid to come in and I had to deliver a song. It had to be recorded. We had to perform it that afternoon and then teach it to the whole school at the end of my show. So it was like, there's no discussion. There are 21 ways to bug your teacher. My dog ate my homework. It's like, this is the title. Let's just write the song, and it better be true. I mean, I got a note from this woman the other day. She said, you were at my school in grade 6 and we wrote that song, Hope is Like a Chicken. Can you send me, do you have a copy of it? Right. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that song. Hope is, they came up with this title. It's like, you guys, I don't know any way in which hope is like a chicken, but okay. So we're going to prove, we've got to prove this thing, right? Because we had to write the song then because we're in. And that was kind of, when I sent her the song and she said, well, it's not quite as good as I remember it, but I still love it, and this is 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, but my point, or what we're talking about here, is the fact that we don't have the luxury of giving up at that struggle stage because we're committed in those situations. And we also have each other, when you have another person and it's like, I don't know what to say. Well, how about if we said this? It's like, yeah, well, that's kind of getting, and then you're back in the game. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that when you go into schools, you have a couple hours. How long does it take when you work with an individual person usually to write a song?
Oh, it depends. I've done some in like half an hour.
Oh, wow.
That have been really good. And I've had some that have taken 3 hours. Yeah. Normally it's 90 minutes kind of like is about what we usually do. Because they do a bunch of prep. I send them the deep dive worksheet and they've had time to think about things and write about it. And so we already have a whole bank of words and phrases and stuff to draw on.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked them to identify some music that they like. So I get a sense of what they'd like it to feel like and, the energy that we want it to have. And we've had a conversation ahead of time. So, there's a bit of a process that we go through. And, to prep it. So, we're not coming in totally cold.
Right.
But I've done them with a couple of people where we came in totally cold and we wrote great songs that I loved and they loved. Yeah.
That's amazing. Because I was expecting you to say, oh, it's a couple of weeks or at least it's a couple of days.
No, but if we want to make changes, like I always do a follow-up session, I give them a singing lesson. I send them the sheet music. I get sheet music of the song that they can frame and hang somewhere. So they sing it every day. What I really want to do is support people in keeping the song alive and making sure they use it. So I always do a follow-up session a week after, and then usually a month after we'll talk again. And then so if they want to make changes, we can. Because I don't really care if we need to spend more time.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure that they love their song.
Right. And I love the idea that you're making sure that they keep it alive. It's kind of a symbiotic thing, right? Because the song in many ways is keeping them alive and they have to keep the song alive. And that's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the whole idea of just kind of ritualizing it and having it there. And, and the songs take on different meaning. Like for me now that I have a house on the water and someone to love, it doesn't feel like an aspirational song. It feels like living proof that I can have these things that I dream of.
Have you written yourself another one since?
I write myself new ones periodically for certain things at certain times, But and then I sing other people's songs all the time, the ones that I've written with other people, because they really apply to everybody. A lot of times a good song does. Right? It's specific to you, but it's also, I am calm, I am strong, I am well, I'm perfectly in tune, I thrive in all I do. Love is what my life's about, and I'm beautiful inside and out. I mean, I wrote that with a woman who had just had a double mastectomy, and she was, trying to survive cancer. And that was based on her affirmation. But, I am calm, I am strong, I am well.
Yeah.
We all need that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like I simultaneously want to say touchstone and grounding, and maybe they're the same thing, and maybe they're sort of variations on the same theme, but that's what it feels like to me. It's like this thing that I can go back to when I need a little encouragement, when I want to celebrate that something happened, whenever, I need a little extra oomph. Yeah. I have this song. I absolutely love that idea.
Thanks, Nancy. It's great to have it affirmed. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's definitely on my list. I save enough pennies.
Cool. All right. Well, let's talk.
Yeah.
I have a payment plan. Yeah. I never like money to be the reason that people don't do it.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, especially people like you that are just, the kind of people that I want to work with. I would love to do that with you. So we'll talk about it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such a cool conversation, and I hope that it inspires other people to think about what they would like to have as a song, or even to give you a call and see what that might mean. Because I'm starting to think everybody needs to have their own song.
Yeah, well, you won't get an argument from me.
Of course not.
Yeah, but you can go to PowerSongs.ca, and there's my website, and people are welcome to book a free 20-minute call with me and just, talk about it and see if it's a fit.
Cool. Well, I hope that they will, because I think this is a great idea and something that makes the world a little bit better, one person at a time. So,
yeah.
Thanks for coming and talking to me about it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That's our show. My thanks to Lowry Olafson for joining me, and to you for listening. Please leave a review of the show, and in it, tell us about a meaningful musical experience you had. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. I appreciate it so much. It really helps the show find new listeners. If this episode resonated with you, don't forget to get in touch on any of my social platforms, or even via email at nancy@fycuriosity.com, and tell me what you loved. And if you're feeling a little bit less than confident in your creative process right now, and you haven't yet signed up for my free email series on 6 of the most common creative beliefs that are messing you up, please check it out. It'll untangle those myths and help you get rolling again. You can find it at fycuriosity.com, and there's also a link right in your podcast app. See you there, and see you next week. Follow Your Curiosity is produced by me, Nancy Norbeck, with music by Joseph McDade. If you like Follow Your Curiosity, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to tell your friends. It really helps me reach new listeners. Thanks.